This meeting is being recorded.
Wow, it comes up with this big audio through it. Hello, everyone. We're going to be starting shortly. I'm just going to share a link to this live FigJam file, so come and join us. And if you want to send any messages, please switch inside the Zoom chat to everyone rather than posting panelists so everyone can see messages coming in. And also, just down the bottom here, if you want to stamp whereabouts you're dialing in from, that'd be cool. Or alternatively, feel free to take a picture. We'll start in about 3 minutes or so. Hopefully, as people come in, I'll keep resharing the link because Zoom doesn't have an ability to pin stuff. So just in here, feel free to stamp. Use a stamp wheel and let us know when you're coming. Or if not, you can just send us a message directly in the chat. Some people last time ended up putting comments on because I think the stamp wheel wasn't working for them, but hopefully everyone gets a chance to do that. Music volume's all right, yeah? Nobody's being kind of fussy. Nice. It's got a few people coming from the UK, a couple of people in the Netherlands, Maxime in France, Paris. I love seeing all the cursors crowding around. Seems like the majority of people are in Europe. So yeah, I guess it's mainly almost good after. Just after the day. Oh, and yeah, if Becky, Finn, Henry, if you've got any other resources that you wanted to share from the presentation, if anything comes up, just feel free to put that in. Waiting for some people to join us. Take some photographs and put them on the map. Hey, Vanessa, in Canada. Going international. Hey, Lily. $50 seconds left and then we'll get started. If you're just joining us and you want to join us in the file, here's a link to the FigJam file. Feel free to come and stamp on the map whereabouts you're dialing in from today, or alternatively, if you want to take a picture using the photo booth, so that I'm not looking like some sad person on my own here. And if you're having any issues joining on the file, just let us know where you're dialing in from in the chat. Cool. Well, we're at about 70 people, so we can probably get started. Obviously, feel free to come and join in the file. We're also going to be taking questions in the file and also through Zoom's Q&A feature. So feel free to use whichever's easier for you. Hey Nelly, I can see you darling from Manchester. Nice. Welcome everyone. I'm just going to center this slide here. My name's Hugo. I'm a designer advocate at Figma. So our roles as designer advocates is we help to run quite a lot of these events-based things. We're all former designers. The advocate team has actually also got developer advocates now and facilitation advocates, FigJam advocates. So if you've got any questions specifically around Figma, we're here to support you. Everyone in the team formerly had a profession as a designer or as a developer or as a facilitator. So we can talk very much designer to designer and help you if you've got any challenges using Figma. If you want to sign up to any of our other live streams, you might have already come across our events page, but that is where all of our future live streams are sourced. So feel free to sign up to some future ones. If you've got some recommendations or some ideas for what you would like to see as a live stream, if there's a topic that you'd like to hear more about, or if you actually want to come and talk about something, send an email to community@figma.com. And then just some kind of housekeeping. The session's going to be recorded and is going to be available on our YouTube channel. It's usually about a week and a half between the live stream and it being made available. If you've got any questions, please feel free to use the Q&A function inside of Zoom, or alternatively, drop a sticky over here. So you can click S on your keyboard and then you can write a sticky. If you keep this on as well, it will let me know who it is who's asked the question, so I can call you out by name and we'll run through some questions at the end. Obviously, if you're in the chat, please feel free to switch over to everyone, and then that means that we'll all receive messages so that everyone can kind of see, hype up our speakers and stuff. And finally, feel free to check out our code of conduct as well. This is obviously, a safe space, and we just want to make sure that everyone's being kind of nice to each other. So I'm going to hand over now to the Bupa team. So Henry, do you want to take it away? I'll stop there.
Yeah. Cheers, Hugo. Yeah, I'm going to share my screen as well. And Becky and Finn, if you could just give me a heads up and let me know once you can see.
Yeah, we can see that.
And can you hear me?
Yes.
Excellent. Okay. Thanks for tuning in, everyone. I know that quite a lot of you are on lunch breaks and stuff, so yeah, really appreciate you giving us the time. We're going to talk to you a little bit about chaos and collaboration, which is definitely a name that we got signed off by our brand team and we're not going to get in trouble for. What do we mean by chaos and collaboration? Well, all will be revealed. You're going to be hearing from myself. Hello, I'm Henry, lead content designer at Bupa, and you're going to be hearing from my friends and colleagues, and yes, in that order, Finn and Becky as well, and they'll introduce themselves in time. Okay, so what we're talking about. We're going to give you a little brief history of Bupa. We're going to set the scene a little bit, tell you about the parameters that we're working in and who we're working with. So some of you may be familiar with Bupa. It's a bit of a British stalwart in terms of healthcare, but yeah, give you a bit of history and a bit of insight into what Bupa is. So we are a healthcare business. We offer multiple products and services such as healthcare, dental care, insurance, and care homes, and lots more than that, but they're the headline acts, and we're based in multiple locations across the world. So we're coming to you from a team who are based in Salford, in Manchester, adjacent to Manchester, if there's any Salfordians on, sorry. In Media City, which is also where you can find the likes of the BBC and ITV and other kind of institutions around there that you might be familiar with. Bupa is based in multiple locations across the world. So we have an arm in Spain, we have an arm in Saudi Arabia, Australia, New Zealand, Brazil, Chile, India, Turkey, all over the place. So there's lots of people that we can collaborate with and lots of people that we can learn from, which we're very, very grateful for. Those kind of territories and those different arms of Bupa are united under one ambition. And I'm a big fan of lofty ambitions, both from a personal and a professional point of view, but I don't think I've ever seen an ambition quite as lofty as the one that we work towards, which is to be the world's most customer-centric healthcare company. There are a lot of things that we as a business can do to make sure that happens, but fundamentally, user experience and experience design is at the heart of that in the digital space, and we're going to talk about that a little bit later. Bupa is big. It's a big old business. We have 43 million customers, and that's not a brag. I'll be honest, from our side, a hassle, if anything. It means we've got a lot of people that we have to design for, a lot of people that are trying to do lots of different things and achieve different goals and whatnot when they use our services. And those 43 million customers are supported by 82,000 employees. It's not exactly 82,000. That's just a sort of estimation. We can't be exact. Because change happens. But yeah, there's a lot of people that work for Bupa, and there's a lot of people that depend on Bupa for their healthcare needs. It's also quite old. It's been around for a while. So yeah, last year we celebrated 75 years of Bupa. There was all sorts of festivities happening in line with that. But yeah, it's a traditional business, and it's first and foremost an insurance business as well. So we're looking at a big old insurance business. The kind of place that you really want to go and work for if you're interested in technology and moving things forward. It's not we're not exactly set up for rapid change, but that's what myself and the experience design team, some of whom are on this call, are all trying to do. So we're all working towards. Like I said, these are us. Hello, Henry. I am from Warrington, which is not too far from Manchester. And we've got Finn and Becky as well, who are going to introduce themselves as we go along. Finn is our lead UI designer and Becky is our lead UX designer. Okay, so we are part of the experience design team, which I've already mentioned a couple of times. So the experience design team used to be called the digital experience design team, but that was abbreviated to DED, and we work in healthcare, and we thought that's probably not the best thing to do. So we've rebranded to experience design, and yeah, fundamentally we're in charge of the customer experience, the user experience when using our digital products. It's a bit of a departure from your traditional UX team, but we feel like it's more encompassing for the different roles that comprise the experience design team. Yeah, so obviously, like I said before, the lofty ambition, we are kind of integral to that. We are kind of firmly front and center when it comes to people interacting with our digital products. Finn has made these slides and he's put in a quote from Spider-Man, which just gives you an indication into sort of his mentality when it comes to these sort of things. But he's not wrong. With great power comes great responsibility. As a team, we've grown quickly. So I joined the experience design team in August 2020 with 2 other people who joined the experience design team, and on that day, that team grew by 33%. So when I joined, there were 9 experience design people. Or designers. We now have over 40 designers who are working across different products and services. Yeah, it's been a pretty rapid expansion, and there are certain trials and tribulations that have come with that. But it's really nice to see the business investing in experience design and user experience as a whole. And when we say multiple different products and services, we're talking about a large range of different channels and different outlets. So we have a suite of apps, including Bupa Touch, Bupa Be Me, Bupa Blue Health, which is a digital GP solution, as well as a consumer-facing website, a business-to-business facing website, and lots of other kind of healthcare professional portals and whatnot. So there is a lot of different things that require attention and require investment in from an experience point of view. Team structure. So I've worked in a few different organizations, and Bupa's team structure is, I suppose, slightly more unique than what I'm used to. But the key tenets are still there. We have a UI team, a UX team, a content design team, and a user research team as well. We're identified by our specialisms, but we're not limited to them, which is, I think, really beneficial for collaboration. So I'm a content designer. Doesn't mean I just stick to content. I'll work with Becky and I'll work with Finn on the solutions that we're designing and what we're proposing, and we'll work alongside each other, which is a great opportunity to learn more about different disciplines. But it's also a really good method of making sure that what we're doing is right for the customer from a visual point of view, from a copy point of view, from a journey point of view. It's just really beneficial. Yeah, we converge multiple skill sets to bring out the best in any project, and we're supported, or we're very lucky to be part of an experience design team which is absolutely rife with talent. Some excellent people in there who do some really good work, and who are a joy to work with on a daily basis. Sounds like I'm on a recruitment drive. I'm not. Where we sit as designers is we sit within squads, and as just as a sort of side note, I've got a picture here of the greatest squad ever assembled, which is the 98-99 Man United squad. Yeah, we're some people might call squads product teams. Don't shake your head at me, Finn. Some people might know them as product teams, but we call them squads. Within a squad, we have different representatives from the different disciplines of experience design. So you'll have a UX designer, a content designer, a UI designer, a user researcher, and they'll work with our immediate stakeholders. Those being our business analysts, product owners, delivery managers, and other stakeholders who are close to the projects that we're working on. Working in squads is a really beneficial way of working closely and collaborating with the people who aren't designers and bringing them into the design world. We found it to be really effective. You know, it's really nice to sit on a call where you have a product owner who's kind of chipping in with design ideas and solution ideas, and yeah, bringing the stakeholders along with the journey when you are designing a solution. It also means that we can kind of pair people with of different skill sets, so they can learn from each other, and it's just a really nice way to collaborate and work together on things. And there's a sort of footnote here that says there are lots of people that have a say in what we design and what we do. It can get quite busy sometimes, and sometimes is code here for most of the time. So I know you're wondering, how does it all come together? And that is a good thing to wonder and a good question to ask. So fundamentally, what we need as a design team is we need a space where we can kind of collaborate, where we can get together and we can work on things as a team. We need somewhere where we can experiment and we can ideate, and we can do all the fun stuff that we like to do as an experienced design team, and run our little workshops and our sprints and do crazy eights and do all that kind of stuff. We need an area where we can present our work, and as you can see, there is a presentation happening right now, and I'm not using PowerPoint, so I might give you a hint as to where we're going next. We need a means of gathering feedback from our stakeholders, collecting comments. We need a source of truth, and we need a place to hand over designs. And speaking of handovers, I'm now going to pass you over to Finn, who's going to talk to you a little bit about how we use Figma.
That was a very smooth transition, Henry. Hi everyone, I'm Finn, so I'm leading the UI discipline here at Bupa. So I'm going to talk to you a little bit about how we specifically use Figma as a tool to tackle some of the problems that Henry's mentioned. And as he's described, we work in a big, complicated, old business that's trying to transform and create new, simple solutions for people. And we are very much kind of in the mix there and responsible for delivering some of that. So yeah, so Figma, it's a key tool for us that we use. And talking of tooling, with the business being so big, there's a whole array of tools and software that specializes in different parts of the design process. And we could opt to use all of them, and we've tried using multiple, but we found the easiest thing to do is to commit to using one tool that can do everything well, as opposed to using multiple tools that specialize at different stages. And the reason for that is adoption, right? When you work in a big company and a big business, the challenge is to get people onto the same platform. So that's something we've really tried to kind of advocate here at Bupa and push Figma. And I think we've made some good progress. So yeah, so for this reason, Figma has become our end-to-end tool of choice, replacing the previous need to hop around other platforms. And I'm just going to talk to you a little bit how we use Figma. So from a kind of organization point of view, we'll go from teams to files, and then I'll show you in a file and how we structure those files and some of the tools we use inside a file as well. So our teams at Bupa are organized by the products we build. I think that's a pretty kind of familiar trend generally. And we encourage everyone to join as many teams as possible, and as many teams as they would like to, regardless whether they work on them or not. And again, that's just to create that kind of open door visibility. So yeah, teams are based around the products. If we go into a team, we have our projects. And our projects vary very differently from team to team, but they generally are based around a specific feature or a journey within that product. So for example, we'll have a project named after a journey like registration, and that'll we'll have a journey of registration that lives within the onboarding project, within the core touch team. So yeah, we try and keep it simple, a little bit of structure there, but again, people are free to kind of change and edit that as they see fit within their teams and squads. then moving lower into files. So files represent different specific projects, right? And we like to keep everything related to that project within the same file instead of creating, multiple files for each day or sprint. And we encourage designers to name files simply, right? Just name it what it is. We're trying to avoid jargon or get fancy with acronyms, which is something we do quite a lot at Bupa, hence the name. And there'll often be times a project, impacts multiple products or different journeys. And this happens a lot, and it's fine. And I think in this case, again, it's up to the designers or the squad's discretion to decide where this project file should live. So some things that we do within files to create this balance between visibility and creativity. As designers, it's important that we have that safe space to be able to, go into a corner and design without the fear of being critiqued or reviewed. But it's really important that we create that visibility, right, across the business. And that's something it's a big responsibility, and it's something we have to do to create that element of trust between us and our stakeholders that are all watching the project as it develops. So a few kind of tips and tricks we use are, again, file thumbnails. And I'll show you how this looks in an example file. But this basically is a component that you can swap and change depending on what type of file it is, and sometimes even what stage the project is within the journey. And we've tried various kind of methods and versions of this. And again, this is an exploration that we're working on. We typically kind of have 4 different themes here. Again, there's no limit, and designers are free to choose what they want or even create new ones. But generally, we surround these kind of 4. So an exploration represents like an informal idea or an exercise not specifically related to a project. So that could be some work that designers wanted to just look at outside of their squad, such as reimagining how the Touch app dashboard might look. And then we have working files. So this is a specific project file that we'll need. And sometimes it's used as a bit of a source of truth to the project as well. We have various workshop files floating around and resources as well. So templates, such as the design file template, which I'll show you in a little while. Cool. So yeah, so aside from the files themselves, again, we try and keep these visible and reduce as much friction and barriers as we can as possible. Designers are very familiar with Figma and know how to use it, and we have the luxury of getting these big Mac screens and we can see everything. But you have to kind of empathize with stakeholders that might not have the same setup as us and aren't as familiar as Figma, and we need to make that as easy as possible, right, for them to use. So the first really important thing is making those links viewable, just straight off the bat. So yeah, anyone within Bupa can view these links, right? And we'll go into this file structure now and show you a little bit of that and how we structure our files to create that visibility and help people kind of guide them through the file. Cool. I might need Henry to. You're on it. Great. Sweet. Do you want to click on my head? Yeah. Brilliant. Cool. All right. So this is our template file. So we've set this up as a kind of design resource, basically, for designers to use and copy for their own projects. And it provides a little bit of structure and guidance onto how you might want to structure a project. So we're starting here with the cover page. So as I mentioned, this is set up as a kind of component that you can toggle on and off kind of different variants depending on. We previously used to have what phase, and it might now be what type of project this is. And you can populate various fields that will populate this thumbnail. Again, really simple, keep it basic, so it's easy at a glance to see exactly what this file is and what type of file this is as well. And you'll notice this isn't the first page in the file. And the reason for that is because it's not really the most important page for any stakeholder. Once a stakeholder knows the project and knows what they're working on, they want to see the design work. So that's always the first thing that we put within the file. So in this example, we've got this handoff section. And if I click into here, you can see kind of a note, and we do this throughout the file as well to add that kind of guidance and help people, particularly designers, know how to use this page. So a handoff file is any handoff page is any design that's being played back, handed off, approved, basically ready for development to build. And we log these within here with a date stamp. So it's really clear what's the latest design, what should stakeholders and developers be referring to when they come into this file. And you can see an example here of this. So I've just put in a simple journey of showing a request treatment journey. And we use some of these labels to show the stages to the journey, such as previous treatment here. We show a bit of a page, how to name different artboards as well, so labeling screens as well. Again, the key thing here, this is guidance and it's not enforced, right? So a designer, it's up to their squad to decide what works best for them. And some kind of clues around kind of how to add flow lines and add context and that sort of thing, but relatively pretty simple. And you'll notice on the left side where the pages are, again, we try and create some space, right? So put some sections in and section these off based on what pages under what topic. Following the handoff, sometimes there's design documentation. So this is work that is sometimes unique and outside of our design system. So it needs to be documented and redlined and detailed so the developers can follow it clearly. So again, some examples here, which I've added in. So we'll break these up around, things like page layout, so page anatomy, component specs, so some red lines around unique components and how these might behave on different screen sizes. And if any components have various states, which most do, we'll add that in as well. So form fields, for example, here, showing the various states of how that might look. And this can go on and on and on, depending on the needs of your project, right? So we have a type scale, we have some basic notes around accessibility for this one, and even some content strings, which, some content rules as well, which have been added in. Cool. We also have some other pages that, aren't necessarily relevant for designers, but really help stakeholders kind of navigate the file. So usually we encourage designers to add that context, right, throughout the file to help people kind of guide them through the structure. And another really important thing is project details. So this is more about, creating that connection and syncing across what we're doing in Figma as opposed to what maybe the product owner is doing in Azure, and keeping things aligned. An example of how we do this is using widgets, right? So embeds are our friend. It means we don't have to update things manually. This is an example of an Asana embed, and it's a great example of how we can kind of show the details of the project within Figma. And likewise, we'll add this Figma link to the story or the ticket as well in DevOps. Cool. So I'll just touch on some of the different areas of the disciplines as well. So as Henry mentioned, we all work together, right? We specialize in different areas, but we work together throughout the process. And sometimes, Henry might take the baton when it comes to focusing on content, but we'll all be there to kind of work with him, support him, and try and do that job together. So to create these kind of spaces where different disciplines can go off and do their own exploration work, we've broken those up into sections as well. So you can see kind of research findings, UX, they have their own UX playground, similar to content, and again, similar to UI as well. So we've broken that up into some playground areas. And again, that kind of communicates to the stakeholders as well that this is a place for us to explore, and not to critique or review or think this is what's going to be shipped, basically. In terms of work that we develop and produce, we have a process for that within the Figma file, and it's kind of based around like a simple traffic light system, right? So we will have some flows and designs that exist in different stages. Green representing kind of ready, in which case that once it's been kind of played back and approved, it would be moved into that handoff at the top. And anything else that's either blocked or still a concept or in design would either be in that amber or red area. So, again, just adding that structure, right, to help people kind of get through the file simply and understand what's the latest design and where do they need to go. And we also have things like design checklists. So again, we could have done this anywhere, but it's worked best for us that we include this in Figma and just have this inside the file. It comes naturally to us to open Figma when we're working together. So it makes sense for this to be here ready to go. And this is an example of a UI design checklist for when we're conducting a peer review. So some kind of key points around, reviewing accessibility, brand application, use of design system, any documentation that might exist where there's unique or specific patterns that are not design system related. Again, things that are non-design but more around file structure, page layouts, and any navigation and interactions that the designers need to review. So a bit of a guide, a little checklist to help our designers conduct those peer reviews. And of course, every file, isn't complete without some dog pictures. Henry's added this in, and this is an important kind of aspect really of the design, the file. And I think Figma can be quite an intimidating product for people that aren't designers or have only seen it for the first time and see 40 different pages and don't know where to start. So some dog therapy can really kind of help just settle the waters and bring people in to the file. Cool. So that's kind of a few things that we do within the file to structure it. And we also, one thing that's really important is maintaining a version as well, a design version. And, being health insurance and healthcare, it's a sensitive business. And we all have to be really closely aligned on okay, what is the latest thing that we're working on? What are we shipping? What needs to be reviewed and approved? And we'll just use the version control tool within Figma to document changes and to show the latest design. So I think Henry's going to demonstrate this. Cool. So yeah, so as you can see, Henry recently added some dog pictures into the file. So as per some of the guidance we've added in, he's added this version in, date stamped it, and added some details as well into that file. So that gives us a really good idea of who's done what at what time, and really helps if you need to go back, exactly what changes have been made. Cool, great, thanks, Henry. So I think that's kind of mostly what we do within the file. I'll jump back to the slides. So I've reeled off some ideas and some tricks that we've learned, but we've also learned a few things, right? There's a load of good examples out there online that we've looked at, researched, and tried to adopt, and some things have worked and some things haven't, right? And we've noticed that you've got to find your own solution. You've got to find a way that works for your team, and every team has their own needs. So, this is by no means the perfect one and done example. We're always trying to kind of iterate and work on that. And also principles over rules, right? So it doesn't work shouting down a megaphone and telling designers, this is how we work, and get in line, and this is how we do things. It's much easier to explain the kind of principles and what we expect, things around visibility, clarity, simplicity, that sort of thing, and let the teams figure out how they might meet those principles. So again, that's something we found really works rather than heavy kind of rules and documentation. And lastly, don't be precious over your design files, right? We've used Figma previously to maintain master files or the latest source of truth at all times. And we found it's a lot of effort and it doesn't reap that much benefit for us. And the reason for that is because typically our design files are usually always in the future, right? They don't represent what's happening currently on the production build. Design is a bit like a painting that never dries, right? So you're always working on it, always iterating it. So yeah, Figma is just not a long-lasting source of truth for us. We accept our Figma files will, slowly become outdated, and we use Figma as a vehicle for delivering work. And we rely on our design system and our production and staging builds to represent that source of truth. Cool. I think that's all for Inside Figma. So over to Becky to talk about collaborating offline.
There's lots of problem with your microphone, I think, or
Is that
a lot of muffled sounds.
really?
Yeah, try again.
Is it better now?
It's a little bit quiet, but I don't know
Right,
if something's covered for it, but we can hear you.
Okay. If I need to speak up, just again shout and I'll try and raise my voice a bit more. So yeah, start again. Sorry about that. So as Finn said, I'm Becky. I joined Bupa in July last year, so I've been at Bupa for about 9 months now. And I'm the lead UX designer, so I manage the team of UX designers who fit under that kind of experience design structure that Henry's already explained. So as he's also explained, we do work with a range of people all across Bupa who have a complete variety in experience and also interest in digital ways of working. And as Finn also mentioned, their technology isn't always as great as ours, so we have to kind of bear that in mind. So one of the things we have to consider is that as great as Figma is for us, it doesn't necessarily work for everybody. So we have to use other tools that are probably familiar to all of you, which are specifically Teams and SharePoint. They're a really good way for us to just kind of collaborate with people and also show them that we're kind of willing to meet them in the middle. We don't want to dictate to anybody how we should be working. We want to kind of work with them to collaborate, to build the best products that we can. Also kind of harvesting their knowledge as well, because we're well aware that we don't know everything that there is to know. So part of that relationship building as we start to work with these people is to get them more involved in the design process. We want to kind of explain the benefits of human-centered design to them. We don't want them to feel like we're kind of telling them what is best. So part of that is using, as I say, tools that are a bit more realistic for them and a bit more familiar with them. That said, we do want to bring them into the process as much as we possibly can. So part of the way we do that is by getting them involved initially in things like ideation workshops. So that's something that I've found has worked really well in the squads that I work in. Just getting people familiar with using Figma, because a lot of them don't even have access. So we have to kind of temporarily grant them 24 hours access here and there to run these workshops. But the more familiar they're getting with Figma, the more they're seeming to enjoy to use it. And actually, a lot of them seem to really find it quite fun now. So I think there's that initial moment where they're invited to it, they open it, they're a little bit overwhelmed, then we're asking them to kind of sketch things, and the immediate reaction is, oh my god, I can't draw. But as people get into it and use it more and more, they do genuinely seem to really enjoy it and find it really fun. So that's a really good way that we found of getting them on board. Obviously around that we do have things like agile ceremonies, again probably really familiar to all of you, but just to kind of give you some context as to how we work at Bupa, things like this do kind of work a little bit differently from squad to squad. And we found that that's something that works, and that's okay. We don't have to follow all the rules rigidly if that's not working for us. But as these processes and ceremonies have become more established, yeah, we've realized that bit of variety just works better for different squads. It's okay if you don't have a retrospective at the end of every sprint, but every month or every couple of months, if something's not worked as well as it could, stick a retro in, get together as a team and have a conversation about what you've learned and what you could do better next time, and that's okay. As a UX team as well, or an experienced design team, as Henry's kind of touched on already, we have grown a lot and really quickly. So the team has effectively quadrupled in size over the past year or so. Since I joined, my UX team in particular has doubled in size as well, and that's just in the last kind of 9 months, as I say. So it's really important for us as designers specifically within our disciplines, but also within the wider kind of experience design community to get to know each other. And a big part of that and a big reason for that is so that we have a safe space to talk to each other, to challenge each other, to push each other to be better designers, to critique each other, and just basically to be able to be honest with each other and to know that that comes from a good place. And it's all about wanting to do the best work that we can and deliver the best experiences that we can for our customers. So just a couple of examples of how we do that. We all have a weekly or fortnightly, in some occasions, community of practice, which essentially works as kind of like a team meeting. So it's just a place for us to get together and have some of those more informal conversations that, you know, particularly as a lot of us are still working in a hybrid way, you don't get the chance to have those conversations as much in person anymore. So it's just really nice to be able to check in with each other and as a new team to be able to get to know each other and just see what people are up to, how their week's going and what they're working on. And then we also have weekly design crits where it's more kind of work focused, and we'll share what we've been working on, go through some designs that are in process. We'll talk about workshops that we've run and kind of what went well and what we might do differently so that other people can benefit from that experience and that knowledge. And as I say, it's just a bit more of a work focused session once a week to help each other to develop and to learn and to just share some knowledge and to grow as designers. And then we do also have like a weekly team catch up, experience design catch up. We have 2 of those. We have, again, one that's a bit more like a team meeting with updates about things to do with HR, things like annual leave. You know, we're all coming up to the end of the leave year. Make sure you take your holidays and things like that. And then we have a more social one on a Friday afternoon, which is just a bit of a wind down at the end of the week. And obviously we do have social time more and more in person these days. There's kind of like a Nintendo gaming group of people that get together on a Friday, that kind of thing. And we also have away days now and again as well. So we've had a couple of away days in person as well, which has been really nice, because actually I think one thing we've not mentioned is that our team, the experience design team, is actually split across like a lot of the UK as well. So we are, as Henry said, based primarily in Salford, but we have people in Belfast, Brighton, London, Edinburgh. So people are really kind of dotted around the UK as well. And it's just really nice to be able to get together in person and get to know each other a little bit more. Obviously, a really key collaborator for us is users. So we do loads of user research, loads of user interviews, loads of testing. We use tools like Hotjar as well to kind of gather feedback on how people are interacting with our pages once they've gone live. We obviously do usability testing of new things before they go live. And then the researchers, I think there might be a couple on this call actually, so hello. They also do regular playbacks as well. So they'll play back to us within our squads in terms of this is what we've learned about the thing that we've been working on and the thing that we've built. But they'll also play back to kind of the wider team as well to share recommendations, what we've learned, so that other people can benefit from that if they're working on something similar that might have a user base that is, you know, similar enough that that knowledge is applicable to be used elsewhere. So yeah, I'll finish on a few other things that we've learned about working together offline as well as on Figma. So the first point I think is really important, because for us as designers who might have worked in this way for a long time, a lot of this stuff is really obvious. It's just common sense, and we just kind of do it without thinking a lot of the time. But I think it's really important, especially if you're working in a squad with people who aren't so familiar with any of these things, is to not assume that they know more than they know. And it's trying to find that balance between being a bit patronizing and over explaining things, but making sure that you're explaining it enough that they know what you're talking about. So instead of just inviting someone to a retro, just bearing in mind that they might not know what that means and explaining the benefit of that meeting and what it's for. And then kind of on the same line, just make sure everybody's on the same page. So one thing we do at the start of bringing a new squad together is just have a kickoff so that everybody understands kind of the rules and how things work, and everybody can agree kind of the classroom rules, if that makes sense. And then the other thing that kind of leads on from that as well is, even with all of this planning and all of this organization in place, you still can't control everything. Things will go wrong. And that's okay. You know, you learn from those things, you change them and you do them better next time. So an example of that from something that I've worked on is, there was a squad that I joined about 6 months ago. It was up and running. I was a new person that had been moved in to replace somebody that had to move elsewhere. And there was just a lot of confusion, because when I came in, the processes and things that were already established weren't the way I was used to working. And then we had a couple more people brought in and it was kind of the same for them. And we just thought, you know what, let's have a reset, put everything on hold, and we spend 3 days together doing what we called a sprint zero and just establishing how we were going to work as a team. And things like who was going to be responsible for prototyping and wireframing, because we do have the overlap between roles like UX designers and UI designers. And again, that can kind of vary from squad to squad. So we just wanted to establish how we were going to work together just in a way that everybody was happy with, and everybody was going to keep learning and working together in the best possible way that we could, so that we could deliver the best possible experiences. I'm going to hand over to Henry and see if you've got an example of something like that as well.
Yeah, so for me, the one thing that's been really important is because we've got that sort of differentiation between working in disciplines but also working in squads, to balance that time and to you spend a lot of time working with the people who are in your squad, your kind of immediate stakeholders, but you're still part of a discipline, still part of a team that are all striving to be better and do good things. So establishing those community of practices has been really important for, I think, me personally, but I suppose us as a content design discipline, to have that dedicated time to talk about what it is that we do and how we practice our craft. So yeah, that's been a big learning for me. Finn, was there one did you have one that you wanted to contribute?
I think you've surmised it perfectly. I guess, with all this stuff that we're presenting as well, I think the key message is it's something that's a work in progress and will always be that. We've not nailed it, and we're not kind of preaching. There's a lot we still need to improve on and do well. And I guess, the key takeaway is to treat your teams and how you improve your teams the same way we try to improve our products, right? And the same process there. So doing research on your own teams and finding out what do they need, how can we make their experience better? So we're designing the team as much as we're designing products as well.
Thank you everyone for contributing towards that. It was really great. We've got loads of questions that have come through in the chat. So I'll reshare my screen and we'll start maybe with some of the ones that are in FigJam, and then we can move into a couple that come through on the Q&A. So let me just share my screen again. Okay, let me just move this over here. So I like this one from Emily, and I think this will probably be a question for either Henry or Becky. I've always had problems with the handoff with the UX writer. What is the best way to do this handoff? I know that ideally it should be done before designing, but sometimes it happens after, and it is difficult. So is there anything from either of your experiences that makes that process easier when working with, say, a UI designer or a UX designer working on the UX writing?
Becky, do you want to go or do you want me to go?
I was going to say you unmuted first.
Is that how we're working this? Is it a race? Okay. I mean, I from like my background, so I'm a content designer, but I've been a UX writer in the past, and if I had a penny for every time somebody had told me that they've got problems with UX writers, myself including, then yeah, I'd be a wealthy man. But it kind of depends what you're doing in terms of where the handoff is taking place. If you're kind of passing a wireframe over to a UX writer and that's where the issue is, I would encourage you to involve them much earlier on and talk them through your wireframing process and get them involved in what it is that you're doing. Or if it's a case of they're providing you with copy that they've created separately, and you're struggling to then put that into your wireframe, it's all about collaboration and finding the time to actually sit together or work together and find out what the solution is. More often than not, your UX writer will have a picture in their mind of how they want their copy to be presented, and it's up to them to communicate that with you and to kind of work collaboratively in that regard. So yeah, it kind of depends on what your process is, but the earlier that you involve your writer, the happier they'll be and the better the content will be as well.
Yeah, just to add to that, I was trying to understand from the way you've written your question whether you are a UX designer. I'm going to assume that you are, but basically just to echo what Henry had said, I wouldn't even say in the squad I work in that we do a handoff, because the writer is involved the whole way through the process. We collaborate and we're constantly bouncing things backwards and forwards, giving each other feedback and critiquing things and making suggestions. So I wouldn't see them as separate to your process. I would just involve them, as Henry said, all the way through and as early as possible.
Yeah, that's really good feedback on it. So yeah, earlier the better. Sometimes when that isn't possible, then just making sure that you're doing a bit of hand holding to keep them informed and let them know that their opinion is validated. Because I think often it's that feeling of like the trouble with handoff is, generally speaking, people feeling like they aren't able to contribute because the decision has already been made. So if they don't feel that they can make any influence, then if they can't have any influence, then that's often when they feel put out by that experience, because it feels like the decision's been made for them. So yeah, really sound advice. Sticking with the subject of kind of like stakeholders and working with other people, there's a couple that have come through in the Q&A. So these are both from Aderonke, saying, for a team as large as yours, do you all work remotely or hybrid? I think we kind of answered that part of it, but I think the second part of the question is interesting, which is, does it make a difference in how you communicate? So Henry, I guess you've been at the business for longer, but maybe everyone can share their kind of experience of how that's changed from going from something that was working together versus then working in hybrid, and what things have you had to sort of spend more time doing?
It's quite unique for me because I joined in August 2020, which was I don't necessarily want anybody to cast their minds back to that weird period in the UK, but so when I joined, it was pretty much all remote. Everyone was working from home. And then there's been this slow transition back to this kind of hybrid model. And, you know, from a personal point of view, I try and do 1-2 days a week in the office. But whenever I'm running any sort of workshop, there is always a virtual aspect to it. You can sort of mail me the check after this, Hugo. But I think what's absolutely like vital to that is FigJam. And using that as a digital whiteboard for when you are hosting those hybrid sessions. You know, we've done ones where we can have we'll have an actual whiteboard in the room and people will write ideas on it, and we'll put post-it notes on, and then that'll be like transposed onto a FigJam board so everybody at home can see it as well. And we've also had sessions where we're just not using the whiteboard at all, but we're in a room where people have got their laptops and they're contributing that way. Which, you know, you do miss an aspect of kind of getting up and moving around, which is a more favorable part of a workshop. But yeah, like most things though, we're just kind of figuring it out still as we go along. Like there are some things that have worked and some things that haven't worked. Yeah, I think Becky talked about some of the social side of things as well. And I'm a big fan of a post-work pint. It's quite hard to do a post-work pint if you're in Manchester and the person you want to go for a pint with is in Brighton. So having that kind of dedicated time on a Friday afternoon where we do have a bit of a wind down and we don't talk about work. I mean, there is a rule that we don't talk about work in those sessions. It's been really beneficial in that regard as well, to create like a bit more of an inclusive and a friendly space.
Great. Anything to add on that, Becky or Finn? All good. Okay. So I'm just checking to see if there's any other questions that have come up specifically around stakeholders. I mean, I sort of slightly selfishly, I've put one in here about what have you found is the most important thing to teach non-designers about using Figma? And is there any kind of like formalized training program that you have to teach people, or is it just done on a project by project basis?
It probably does vary from squad to squad again. I would say in my squad, it's things like I mentioned before, like having an ideation session that you might not even have a specific goal, but it's just getting people to use it, because that is obviously the best way of learning how it works. And as I kind of mentioned, you know, people do tend to quite enjoy it once they get into it. But I think there's that initial shock because it looks so different to, how should I call it? Like traditional things that they might be used to working with, like Word or, you know, Outlook and things like that. So I think there is a little bit of them going, oh my God, what am I supposed to do here? But then once they start doing it, they do seem to get quite into it. But I think generally the biggest thing that people struggle with, and that is key for them to understand, is that it's okay to get things wrong. You know, we're not trying to deliver the first most perfect thing. We need time, and that's okay. Like to use things like the playground, and it's okay if other people can see that, with that awareness of that is our space and it's where we're working. Everything there is just for exploration and it's subject to change. So I think, you know, I think it is beneficial for people across the organization to see that everything that you do doesn't have to be perfect. It's okay if it's not.
Yeah, showing stuff that's like half finished is really, really important. Finn, sorry, were you about to add something there?
No, exactly what Becky said. I think the thing is, you know, we've demoed it and done like tutorials, right? But unless they're actually using it, it's quite difficult to do that. So I think we, like Becky said, we kick off with a workshop. Naturally, we'll use FigJam, right? And then again, naturally, stakeholders are going to be involved in that. You know, playing some music at the beginning is a bit overwhelming, like what's going on, but within a few minutes, they're in, and they're very bought in once they realise what it can do.
Nice. And on that subject, I guess, what has been the best way? This is from Carly Herrera saying, what has been the best way you've convinced people to use new tools like FigJam instead of having a separate whiteboarding tool or a pitch deck? Are there certain things that you found have been beneficial for bringing those people in, rather, or do you, like, is the natural default that they go back to something that they're familiar with?
I mean, so you know, again, we work in quite a restricted business, right? A sensitive business, and that transcends to the tools we use. They have to go through a procurement process, right? And they have to be made sure that that's a safe tool for us to use. So it's not super easy for us just to pick up a new tool and try that. You know, sometimes asking for forgiveness is an effective approach, and I think that's probably how we got Figma, you know, got the door open a little bit. But yeah, you know, again, I think that's once we kind of got Figma procured and bought in, and you know, we had so much work in there that we couldn't not use it. It had to be used. We stuck with it. So instead of jumping around, we're very much focused on using it as much as we can now.
Great. I think we'll move on to some questions more specifically about the template, which I maybe put you slightly on the spot here. I don't know if there is a way of potentially publishing a version of that to the community. I know it might need to strip out some of the information that's in there, but it would be really, really helpful to have a copy of that, I think. So if that's possible, I won't hold you to it, but I'm sure a lot of people would love that. So this question from Pavan here saying, when you move pages from the work in progress section to ready for handoff section to handoff do not edit section, do you clear out extra design stuff, e.g. ideation explorations from that page, and do you put that stuff elsewhere?
So anything that kind of is, you know, the handed off, and again, that kind of word handoff, we have to use as part of our process at the moment, although we don't like to kind of say that, but all that handed off work is strictly what's been approved and is what is going to be built. All the work in progress, all the research, all the ideation stays exactly where it is, and we don't get rid of that, because that's the important part, and that's what adds context to the final design, basically what you're shipping. So we very much keep that where it is, right? And you can move things around as you move throughout that process, right? You might have a piece of work, a journey, for example, that's technically blocked, and it will sit in that blocked area, and we find an alternative solution, and that moves into the work in progress, and you basically just move that work into that section. But in terms of I think it mentions kind of the creative stuff, right? The ideation, that'll stay where it is, and it'll always stay there.
And that encourages that behavior of still maintaining a scrappy mentality as well, so that people don't end up feeling this kind of pressure to have everything always polished, to see the direction of how that design has changed over time, and what things have been explored. Just going to go through some of the other points here. First of all, thank you for sharing smart tips. This one from Damien here. First of all, smart tips of working together. What do you think about the file getting heavy? I also manage UX, UI, and research pages in one file, but it is getting difficult because it takes a long time to load as the files grow bigger. So do you create any kind of, because the tolerance obviously for the file size is 2 GB, is there anything that you kind of practice where you have had to switch it because the complexity of a flow is too large?
I mean, we have to use low res dog pics, but I think not sure what else we do.
It is a consideration though, because some of our like immediate stakeholders aren't using the same hardware as us. So you know, we're fortunate to be using MacBooks, but some of our stakeholders are still using Windows machines, and they don't have the Figma app as well, and they'll be loading it in browser. So yeah, but just making sure that we're kind of targeting what we're sending out to the right people, and that we're getting them to focus on the pages that they want to. It kind of helps helps a little bit. It doesn't help with the file size though. That's just a bridge that we have to cross when we come to it. You know, there have been times in the past where somebody has said, I can't open this, it's too big, and we'll just kind of maybe create like a little separate like showcase file for them where it's got all the information that they need in, and we can do things that way and tailor it that way. But yeah, in terms of like the heaviness of the file, yeah, there's not much that we can do, or not much that we do to combat that at the moment.
Great, thank you. I'm just going to run, we've just got a little poll to run just while we ask the last couple of questions. So there's just a little poll to check to see if people are happy to be contacted by sales team. This is just a formality to make sure we've got some coverage for people attending the call. And then I'll probably go through the last two questions and then we'll finish off. So hopefully you should just see a notification coming through in the chat if you're dialed in. Great. So there's a question here which is really interesting, which is about how many projects per person do you share? Does one designer work on around 3 projects, 5 projects? So I guess this is kind of a bit around the squad model. How do you make sure designers, I guess, aren't too overloaded? I don't know who wants to take that one.
I guess that's you know, that's more of a project management, I think, element. You know, designers are typically on one squad that's focused on a specific product, and within that team, they'll be working generally on one journey at a time. So, you know, we try to avoid that people jumping from one squad to another or working on multiple pieces of work at the same time. You know, having that singular kind of focus on one thing. So I don't think that happens a lot, although it does happen, but we try not, you know, we try and avoid it.
Nice.
Yeah, we're very conscious of the effect, the sort of detrimental effect that doing a lot of code switching can have, which is kind of why we have the squad model. And it might be, like Finn said, you know, you're working on multiple projects within one squad, but you are focused on one product. So you're a kind of subject matter expert in that area.
Yeah, it's a way of reducing the need to have too much heavy documentation, because as you say, if that context switching is happening very regularly, it becomes quite hard to build up a collective knowledge over time that helps to inform things around the experience, particularly around research feedback, I find. Otherwise, there's just so much to try and take on. But yeah, it's really good structure. I'll go to the last question here around from Pavan again about, do you have that checklist per feature, per page, or was it just guidance for when you're doing crits, not actually getting something that's checked off? Because the checklist that you showed there, I mean, I guess you're trying to make sure that it's as standardized as possible to be relevant to as many projects as possible, but where does that like customization for the list come in?
Yeah, so I think, you know, that list, again, the example there was specifically around kind of UI design and, you know, some, for example, like accessibility, page layout, that sort of thing that's unique to, specific to UI. It's just a guide. So it's not a tick boxing exercise. It's very much there as a kind of just a guide. And our UI discipline will review that and add to it, edit it, or change it as we see fit, basically. So it'll kind of be created by the discipline in the same way that content, you know, and UX and even research might do the same.
Perfect. I think we're going to have to call it because the time is now 3 minutes past 1. Thank you again so much, Becky, Finn, and Henry, for all of your insight. It was a really valuable session, and thank you everyone for staying on past the hour. We've still got 59 people on the call, which is great, so clearly it's all resonating. And yeah, see you at the next one. Just a quick shout out as well that we are doing config submissions up until the 22nd of March. So if you've got ideas and would like to present at our annual conference, you can get the information for that at config.figma.com, which I'm just showing in the chat now. And you can put through a submission. If you've got questions about it, feel free to send me a message on Twitter or send me an email to hugo@figma.com. Yeah, thanks very much again. And yeah, catch you in the next one. Cheers. Bye.
Cheers.